NBC's Maggie Vespa is reporting on this story. Also joining us is Stuart Stevens, chief strategist for Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign, senior advisor of the Lincoln Project, and former Democratic Congresswoman of Maryland, Donna Edwards, an MSNBC political analyst. Okay, Congresswoman. So I was looking at the visual of these kids, and some of them as little as kindergartners, now having to walk to school under protection. I think it can bring to mind Ruby Bridges during desegregation, right? Needing protection to go into a school, the threat to little kids of color. Is this what we need to accept as the norm now?
Well, it should not be accepted as the norm. I mean, this is really shameful that you have little kids who are under the threat of bombs in their schools being escorted by state troopers, threats to not only schools but hospitals and government buildings and universities, students having to change their schedules because of bomb threats. And I think it really is directly attributable to this false story that Donald Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, continue to promote about Haitian immigrants. And you know, I think it's just really shameful, and their rhetoric is directly causing these threats to little children and to school buildings, and they need to cut it out.
So, Maggie, how is this all complicating law enforcement's job?
Yeah, I mean, it's overwhelming them, Chris. We heard that days ago from Springfield's mayor, who told us the local police departments and sheriff's deputies were the ones handling this thus far. Obviously, now they have major backup with these state troopers, and we're also told bomb-sniffing dogs on hand across the city. Also, Ohio's Department of Homeland Security, they've been tapped to come in, the governor said yesterday, and basically evaluate all the buildings, as many as they can in town, to figure out which ones are the most vulnerable. And, you know, one thing that I want to point out, that word hoax that the governor used yesterday, we've gotten a lot of comments online, people saying, see, they were hoaxes. Therefore, this isn't really as taxing or isn't really as bad as it initially seemed for law enforcement or for Springfield. A hoax doesn't mean a threat didn't come in. The threat came in. It just means that law enforcement didn't find a bomb or a device. But in order to say that, that means the building still had to be closed, in a lot of cases schools, some cases hospitals, college campuses, and they still had to do a sweep. And that is a very taxing thing for law enforcement. It also means that a lot of families were scared and they don't feel safe in their city. And that goes double, Chris, for Haitian families, many of whom have told us they fear for their lives right now in Springfield.
Maggie, thank you for your reporting on this. So, Stuart, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have not backed down on their claims around Springfield, Ohio, despite local officials repeatedly correcting the record, despite what we're seeing, the threat that surrounds, as Donna rightly pointed out, many different places. But to see those visuals outside an elementary school is so striking. What are they getting out of it?
Well, look, I think this is at the root of the whole Trump and Trumpism. How did he launch his campaign? With birtherism, which is just a form of hate. Then he continued it with a Muslim ban in December of 2015. It's the driving force behind Trumpism is anger and hate and fear. And they've seized on this community to victimize and to try to stir up more hate and anger. You know, I just have to wonder, in the past in America, there have been waves of anger against Indian Americans. How would J.D. Vance feel if it was his kids going to school and this sort of hatred was being stirred by a presidential candidate or a major political figure? I mean, it's completely shameful. And it shows just how far the Republican Party has fallen, that so few people are speaking out against this.
Congresswoman, as we watch what's been unfolding in Springfield, I want to also talk about the facts surrounding the assassination attempts on Donald Trump. Here's more of J.D. Vance, who's suggesting, again, it's Democrats' fault.
You know, the big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and 2 people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out. Somebody's going to get hurt by it, and it's going to destroy this country.
So, Donald, let's talk about what investigators say about those 2 attempts. The shooter in the first attempt was found to have just wanted to murder a presidential candidate. And the latest gunman has been all over the political spectrum. He's had a varying number of causes over the years. But how much do facts matter in this time of 2024 where misinformation is so easily peddled and amplified?
Look, I am not about blaming the victim. Any kind of political violence is unacceptable. You do have to ask, though, why it is that Donald Trump has been the one presidential candidate and J.D. Vance really spewing this hatred and the anger and the vitriol and suggesting and calling for political violence and violence in response to what should happen at the ballot box. Across the board, Democrats, whether it's President Biden or Vice President Harris and others, have repeatedly said that violence has no place, no acceptable place in our democracy. That's the tone that we want to strike. But I think as long as the vitriol continues to come from Donald Trump and that camp, that it is not a surprise to me that whether they're lone actors or, you know, if there's a conspiracy, that it engenders that kind of violent response. And the problem is that when you have people who can act on their own, you really have no control except the language that you use. And I would suggest that former President Trump and his running mate really tone down their suggestions of violence because we don't know what a lone actor out there might do. And it's really just unacceptable.
Stuart, at least according to a source who's familiar with Donald Trump's planning, he's still thinking about going to Springfield, Ohio. Does that make sense to you? If you were, let's say, if you were running his campaign, I know that's a far-fetched notion, but if you were running his campaign, can you think of a reason to do that?
Look, I think the Trump campaign is lost. If you're trying to use what may have been an attempted assassination for political gain and what was an attempted assassination for political gain, that's just an indication that you really don't have any positive message that is attracting new voters. I mean, they're trying to harm me. It's not a compelling message. And to go to Springfield, he's not going to get any new voters. No one's going to go there and go, well, now I get it. Now I understand it. It's just going to stir up the same anger that is driving his base of support. And this is the fundamental problem that Trump has politically and Republicans now have. He won with 46.1%. Romney lost with 47.2%. He has never been able to get over 47%. And about 47% of the country is MAGA, and about 53% isn't. And for the life of me, I don't see anything inside this campaign that is trying to expand that base to get to a winning majority.